Micah 4 is a lot of fun because Micah is describing the Messiah's reign in restored Jerusalem during the Messianic age, after freeing Jewish captives from tribulation captivity and defeating Israel's adversaries in a great final battle. And Micah is going to describe all of this. Again, this is much bigger than Micah's generation. Nobody can argue that Micah 4 has a ultimate fulfillment in history because it just totally has yet to happen. And so what we're looking at here are really promises that we're going to experience, or our children, or whatever. We still have yet to see these things fulfilled in a way that give us hope and expectation for the future, and a description of God's intention for his redemptive plan for the world. So the first few verses parallel directly, almost, I think quite identically, Isaiah chapter 2. Now remember, Micah and Isaiah prophesy simultaneously. And so nobody really knows exactly which prophet said it first, but they say the exact same thing. Actually, interestingly, a lot of scholars argue that this was part of the proof of the sovereignty of this prophetic word, the authenticity of the prophetic word, because they in fact weren't quoting each other. They were quoting the inspiration of the Spirit directly. Maybe there would have been a common prophecy that they would be referencing together. For it to be so identical, it's really interesting. But when we get to Isaiah chapter 2, we'll look at it. In Micah's case, in Micah chapter 4, he says, "It shall come to pass in the latter days that the mountain of the house of the Lord shall be established as the highest of mountains. It will be lifted up above the hills." Now, I just want to show you. We're just in verse 1, and it's awesome. Let me show you in the notes the other references that parallel this. Hold on, I got to get down to here's chapter 4. Okay, look at this. In Psalm 67, here we go. Psalm 48, I almost went too far down. If I highlight it, you can at least see where it is in the notes. If you're following along, there it is. The first section of Micah chapter 4, and I've got these cross references. In Psalm 48, the psalmist says, "His holy mountain is beautiful in elevation," speaking of God's holy city. In Psalm 68, which we do know was David, "Why do you look in hatred, O many-peaked mountain?" Talking about that wicked confederation. "At the mountain that God desires for his abode. Yes, where the Lord will dwell forever." He's talking about Mount Zion. And Psalm 68 goes on to describe the exaltation of God's holy mountain as the Messiah enters to reign and rule. That's quite remarkable. All right, the cross references are fun. You can see there's more. Maybe we'll jump back to them here in a moment. But let me get back to Micah chapter 4. We'll have too much fun cross-referencing. But okay, the mountain of the house of the Lord shall be established as the highest of mountains. Now at this point, whether that is a literal or figurative exaltation, it really doesn't matter. It's either way. The Lord's government the Messianic King's government will be the most authoritative government in that day. And it may very well be that the location of the government is truly the highest mountain in that day, because many other biblical authors are going to reference complete overhauls of the topography of the Middle East that really do seem to be that Jerusalem actually will be literally elevated in terms of altitude to be the highest mountain in the region. So that actually very well may be literal. I go into some of that in the notes, but let's move on. Many nations will come and say, "Come, let us go to the mountain of the Lord, the house of the Lord, the God of Jacob, that he may teach us his ways, and that we may walk in his paths." Micah is describing, not Israel, Gentile kings and heads of state and nations coming to the mountain of the Lord, coming to Jerusalem, the house of the God of Jacob, asking to be taught his ways, that they may walk in his paths. Now, some of the neat parallels or cross-references, let me just pull them up so you can see them. Many of them are here. And I even give you a bonus reference to Revelation 21, where John sees this in the book of Revelation, quite literally. And here's Psalm 67, where David says, "Let the nations be glad and sing for joy, for you judge the peoples with equity and guide the nations upon the earth." Literally describing the Messianic King ruling in Jerusalem in the future, guiding the nations in their restoration and salvation process. How about Psalm 82, where the psalmist says, "Arise, O God, judge the earth, for you shall inherit the nations." How about Psalms 58? Mankind will say, "Surely there is a reward for the righteous. Surely there is a God who judges on the earth." Now, that mankind will say is not just Israel receiving salvation, it's the Gentile nations recognizing at Israel's final deliverance, surely all mankind will say. This becomes the testimony of the earth, where it's clearly, plainly visible. There's no denying anymore that surely there is a God, or there is a reward for the righteous. Surely there's a God who judges the earth. All right, Psalm 47, quickly. God reigns over the nations. God sits on his holy throne. The princes of the peoples, all gather as the people of the God of Abraham, for the shields of the earth, meaning the authority structures of the earth, belong to God. He is highly exalted. These are all references that would have been prophesied before Micah, that he could draw from to write this prophecy as well. And then the bonus reference, as John the Apostle, jumping way ahead by many hundred years, is having his revelation experience. He sees the new Jerusalem. He's seeing the heavenly city during the Messianic age, as we talked about in Psalm 48. But look at, I'm jumping ahead. I know I'm breaking my chronological protocol. But look at what John sees. He says, by its light, meaning the heavenly city's light, the nations will walk. The kings of the earth will bring their glory to it, and its gates will never be shut night or day. And there will be no night there. They will bring into it the glory and honor of the nations. It's this interactivity of the nations of the earth and the holy city during the Messianic age. That's all super remarkable to study. And we'll get into that more when we finally get to the book of Revelation, which will be toward the end of our chronological study. And again, the prophecy continues. For out of Zion will go forth the law, the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. He shall judge between many peoples. He will decide disputes for strong nations far away. Can you see all these parallels? And they shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nations will not lift up sword against each other, neither will they learn war anymore. What a huge promise for peace. Isaiah copies that, or vice versa, word for word. They share the same promise of peace, a lasting, permanent, global period of peace in the Messianic age under the guidance and leadership of the Messianic king in Israel. That is remarkable. And eventually we won't have to imagine it. Eventually, these will be verses we actually look on in fulfillment in that day. And Hosea had also recently prophesied about the ending of all war, and I include that reference in the notes in Hosea chapter 2, verse 18. He says, "And I will abolish the bow and the sword and war from all the land, and I will make you lie down in safety." Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful promise. All right, let's scoot down. "But they shall sit every man under his vine and under his fig tree. No one will make them afraid, for the mouth of the Lord of hosts has spoken. For all the peoples walk each in the name of its God, but we will walk in the name of the Lord our God forever." Oh, I love it. It's just that worship, that claim of devotion of this is the most redemptive plan. And that's super beautiful. Okay, let's move down to verse 6. "In that day, declares the Lord, I will assemble the lame and gather those who have been driven away." It's beautiful because as he's describing the regathering of Jewish captives and refugees that are coming out of the tribulation period, he's really describing the great care that God takes to care for those who've been injured, those who are lame and who need assistance returning to the land. And he's describing that like specifically in detail. "And the lame I will make the remnant, and those who were cast off," meaning the outcast who were scattered out into captivity or as refugees, "I will make them a strong nation. And the Lord will reign over them in Mount Zion from this time forth and forevermore." It's a permanent kingdom. And it's a beautiful, beautiful promise that Micah is clinging on to because, again, his generation is right at the onset of what will be an interim fulfillment of that tribulation period with the Assyrian invasion. Verse 8, and you, O tower of the flock, O hill of the daughter of Zion, those are names for Jerusalem, to you shall it come, the former dominion shall come, the kingship for the daughter of Jerusalem. Basically saying the governing center, the authority, the reign and rule of your Messianic king will come to you, O Jerusalem. And then we have this lament, this crying out, this grief that Micah describes of the people of Israel during that tribulation period, both in the Assyrian invasion, where they're gripped, they're seized like a woman in labor. There you can see it there. For now you will go out from the city and you'll dwell in the open country and even eventually into Babylon. He's describing their captivity. Now that's a captivity that took place historically in, beginning in, 605 BC, around that time, the turn of the century there before Christ. But there's a future captivity in a final tribulation period where there is again a great grief and a seizing as a woman in labor, where Israel faces invasion and a great adversarial threat again, but the promise remains the same. There you will be rescued. The Lord will redeem you from the hand of your enemies. This ultimate hope that's rooted in this grand biblical narrative that is essential to the redemption of the world and the fulfillment of the Great Commission. That's why we're looking at these passages. Now many nations are assembled against you, saying, let her be defiled. Let our eyes gaze upon Zion, essentially describing that Psalm 2 wicked army and this wicked confederation of nations that would seek to destroy the people of the covenant. The nations are assembled against you, but guess what? They don't know the thoughts of the Lord. They don't realize God has set a trap for them. They don't understand his plan, that he's gathered them. The Lord has gathered Israel's adversaries as sheaves to the threshing floor. Now this is terrifying language. And I include more about this in the notes. Essentially, the wicked confederation estimates that Jerusalem is an easy victim. In her final tribulation, she's weak, we can invade her land, and we can destroy this people of the covenant. But something else is going to take place, actually, that's going to really surprise them. Israel's Messiah arrives in Jerusalem with a supernaturally strengthened army of freed captives that he set free along his way as he proceeded through southern Judah and into Jerusalem. The arrival of the Messianic army, coupled with the appearance of the heavenly city, causes the wicked confederation to be overwhelmed with dread and crumble. And so the land of Israel is called the threshing floor, the land where they're all assembled. God prophetically calls it a threshing floor. And the freed captives who have been supernaturally strengthened by the Lord are the sledges of iron and bronze that crush their enemies like grain beneath their feet. So that imagery is some of the most brutal, defeat imagery. If you've got just these soft pieces of grain being crushed under the weight of massive sledges with these iron and bronze teeth and all these kind of smashing mechanisms against a stone threshing floor, that is the land of Israel. I mean, you can understand. He's describing a overwhelming, decisive, absolute military victory against Israel's enemies. That obviously did not fully happen. Of course, we saw the Lord sovereignly defeat the Assyrian army, but not Israeli troops. And so this is definitely yet unfulfilled. Nobody argues that this was directly fulfilled at the defeat of the Assyrian army at the hands of the angel of the Lord. That's a little bit different. We'll look at that when we get to Isaiah. Arise and thresh, O daughter of Zion, meaning the people, the returning captives who are being supernaturally strengthened as soldiers to defeat Israel's enemies. For I will make you a horn of iron and make your hooves bronze, and you'll beat into pieces many peoples and devote their grain to the Lord and their wealth of the wealth to the Lord of the whole earth. So again, huge military victory when Israel's Messiah returns and delivers them for their final deliverance. And I actually include a little bit more information about this metaphor of the threshing floor and the threshing sledges from a commentary in the notes. You can see that there. There's also some real helpful references that I would, kind of cross-reference this to, that Micah wouldn't have had to have just come up with this on his own. He could also look to Psalm 2, Psalm 58, Psalm 68, and Psalm 110 as all references of the same scenario that preceded Micah at the time he was prophesying. So quite a bit there.